Guys, if you remember from yesterday's videos, I picked a random binomial and I said, what if this is an answer? And it just kind of like happened to be an answer. Now, I didn't just pull it out of thin air. There is a process for you to determine what possible answers to questions are. And so today we're going to learn how to find every possible rational answer to a problem. That means the nice answers, right? Like the nice whole numbers or even the decent fractions. We're going to make a list of all of our possible answers, and then we'll use that list to solve a problem completely. Let's start by learning how to make the list. So here's our first example, and it wants us to list all of the possible factors to this problem. So basically, it wants to know what are the possible answers to this question. Now, this question has 4 answers since my exponent is 4, but there are more than 4 possible answers. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the last number, your constant, and you're going to list all of the numbers, all of the factors of that constant. Now, I have a process that I go through to make sure that I don't accidentally miss any of them. So my process is I will always start with 1 and the number. So I'm going to start with 1 and 15. And then next I'll try 2 because that's the next number after 1. Now 2 doesn't work because 15 is not even. Next I'll try 3, and 3 does work. It's 3 and 5. Next I'll try 4, and again 4 does not work. The next number that I'll try is 5, but I already have 5 in my list. So now I feel pretty confident that I've listed all of the possible factors for 15. These 4 numbers are our possible answers, but this is only the positive version. So when you're listing out all possible factors, you do need to also include the negative version. So every number that might be an answer to this question is listed below. Positive 1, negative 1, positive 3, negative 3, positive 5, negative 5, and positive 15, negative 15. So those are all of my possible answers. Why don't you guys try this one on your own to see if you can figure out the possible answers. Pause the video and check back in when you're done. Did you get them all? I got the positive and negative versions of 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. Okay, so make sure that you are getting a complete list. Now, this list, again, is going to be helpful when they ask us to solve a problem and we don't really have anything to go off of. So like if I was going to solve that second polynomial with an x to the 5th, like that's a big polynomial. Where do I even start? Well, we start with our list of possible factors. So let's try one of those problems. So here, the directions just say solve. That means like find all of the answers. This problem has 3 answers because it's an x to the 3rd. As a starting point, I'm going to list all the possible factors for this problem. I'm looking at my constant, the number at the end of the question, the 42, and I'm going to list all the numbers that multiply to make 42. I'm going to start with 1 and 42. Then I'll do 2 and 21. Next, I'll do 3 and 14. 4 doesn't work. That's okay. I should still try it. I don't want to skip over it if it does work. 5 also not going to work. That's okay. 6 does work. It's 6 and 7. And the next number that I would try is 7, but I've already written 7 in my list. So now I feel really confident that I've listed out every possible answer that this problem might have. Once you've listed out all of your answers, next you're going to try to figure out, well, which ones are answers? To figure that out, we're going to plug each of these into the original problem. And if we get an answer of 0, that means that when we divide, we would have a remainder of 0, and that means it's a solution. So you want to go grab your handy dandy calculator, and I like to start with the small numbers because I'm like hoping it is a small number. So we'll just start by plugging in the number 1. So in your calculator, you want to type in 1 to the 3rd minus 6 times 1 squared minus 13 times 1 plus 42 equals. And I got 24. So 1 is not a solution to this problem. The really cool thing about this kind of calculator is if you push this up arrow right here, it'll let you go back into what you just typed. And then to type in 2, we just need to replace all the 1s with 2s. So everywhere I typed in a 1, I'm going to change it to a 2 instead. And I can show you how to do this during our live classes if you need to. Hey, when I typed in a 2, it gave me an answer of 0. That means 2 is a solution to this problem. Now, we could just keep typing in answers, but I'll tell you what, there's a lot more answers to try because not only do we have the positive versions of all these numbers, but it's also possible we might get negative answers. And that's a lot of calculator typing. So let's try something different. Once I have my first answer, I can now divide. I'm going to use synthetic division because I think that's the fastest. So I'm going to divide by my number 2 because I know that number 2 will give me a remainder of 0. Again, I'm choosing synthetic division because I think it'll go the quickest. And there's my remainder of 0. Now that I've divided by 2, I now have a smaller problem to work with. This is now going to be a trinomial. It's x squared minus 4x minus 21. Trinomials, I can factor, right? We're going to do x box. So 2 numbers that multiply to make negative 21 and add to make negative 4. That would be negative 7 and 3. Now remember, when you're doing Xbox, you're not finding the solutions. You're finding the factored version. So you're finding what's in the parentheses. So one of my parentheses will have an x minus 7, and the other one will have an x plus 3. But I have to set those equal to 0 to find my actual solutions. This problem has 3 answers because my largest exponent was x to the 3rd. Those 3 answers are 2 from right here. Positive 7, because I'm going to add the 7 to the other side, and negative 3, because I'm going to subtract the 3 to the other side. Let's try one more. This problem also has 3 answers. I'm going to start by listing out all the possible answers based on the fact that the constant is 12. I'd like to start with 1 in the number, so 1 and 12. Next, we can try 2 and 6. Next, we can try 3 and 4. And since the next number is 4, and that's already part of my list, I'm done. I've written out all my possible answers. Once you've written out all of your possible answers, grab your handy-dandy calculator and start typing. When I plugged in the number 1, I got an answer of negative 10. So 1 is not a solution. When I plugged in the number 2, I got an answer of negative 8. Also not a solution, but I am getting closer to 0. That's a good sign. If you're getting closer to 0, you should get to 0 soon, okay? If you're getting further away from 0, then maybe you should try the negative version of those numbers, or maybe you should try one of the bigger numbers. Next, I'm going to try 3. When I typed in 3, I got 0. That's my first answer. My first answer is 3. Now that I have my first answer, I'm going to do synthetic division to make my problem smaller. Okay, so I'm going to divide by the 3. And I already know I'm going to get a remainder of 0 because I plugged in the 3 and it gave me an answer of 0. All right, so now my question got smaller. It did have 4 terms. Now it's only going to have 2 terms because look, that middle term is a 0. So this is going to turn into an x squared plus 4. Now, unfortunately, x squared plus 4 is not factorable. That means my remaining 2 answers are not going to be nice numbers. They're actually not even going to be in that list that we wrote down. This is not factorable because it's x squared plus 4, and for it to be factorable, it would be x squared minus 4. But I can still solve this. So I'm going to subtract the 4 to the other side of the equal sign. And then to get rid of a square on an x squared, you would square root. So I'm going to square root both sides now. When I square root both sides, I will need to put a plus or minus in front of it. That's where I'm going to get my 2 answers. The square root of a negative number is imaginary, so I will have an I in my answer. And the square root of 4 is 2. So my 3 answers to this problem, I got positive 3. That's from right here, plugging in the 3 and getting a 0. And then from this solution down here, I got plus or minus 2i. plus or minus because I square rooted, and then 2i because the square root of 4 is 2, and then I becomes imaginary, or negative becomes imaginary. All right, guys, this is the end of our first video. This is going to get you through the beginning of your homework tonight, and then we do have a second video for the second half of your homework.